What's up, everybody? This is Hawk Talk on Melrose. I am Collin, joined today with Tyler. We are here talking some more Hawkeye football as we are gearing up for the 2024 season. We are coming up on about 2 weeks out from the Illinois State game, which is just crazy to think, but we just got done with Kids Day. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. I had an episode out a couple days ago going over the reaction. But now that I got Tyler back, we're going to talk about it a little bit more on this show for the first half of this episode. And then we're going to get into one of my favorite things in the offseason that we have done the last couple of years, and that is ranking the Iowa schedule. So it's not doing a record. We're not doing that today. We're going to save that for probably game week. But what we're going to do is we're going to go from 12 to 1, 12 being the easiest game, 1 being the hardest game. So we're going to do that in what Ohio State's probably going to be number 1 for both of us. So it's mainly like 12 to 2, right? But we're going to do that. And then I have another topic in mind towards the back end. If we have time, if we don't get to that, then we'll save that for next week. So that being said, Tyler, what is going on? I see that you got a new background, new room, so you can share that with everybody. But it looks good. It looks better than what you've had.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been crazy the last couple weeks here, but last week got married, moved into a new place, so I'm in that transition period with my man cave right now, and or podcast studio, game room, man cave, the whole 9 yards. So yeah. I'm sure it'll look a little different, hopefully a little better as the season continues along here.
It's always nice having like your own little room for that. Cause like even for here, like my place, it's kind of an extension of, it's not a bedroom. It's more just like an office / podcast room. And I just have always enjoyed that about this place that I live at right now. So, but yeah, let's get right into it. Let's first talk Kids Day. Tyler, what did I tell you about 2 months ago? Just randomly, like Kids Day wasn't even announced at that point, but do you remember what I told you about 2 months ago?
About Kids Day? Why even do it? Why even open ourselves up to this criticism that we're going to probably receive?
Yeah. I don't know if we were talking over the phone about that or if I texted you, but for me, don't get me wrong. The concept of Kids Day, I like, it's about the kids. It's about the kid captains. And let's face it, they're facing stuff that's far beyond the game of football. And so for them to be in the locker room and meet some of the players and walk down the tunnel with the players, I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's a sweet concept. But once that's over with, the whole practice, the whole, like, anybody can come and watch, anybody can record and all that. I don't like that. We're 8 days into fall camp, or at that point we were maybe 9 days into fall camp. And so it's always going to lead to criticism, negativity. And frankly, like, I don't even think like the coaches probably would want that. I don't know why we even, I mean, like I said, the kids portion of it, I just wish we could find something or figure something where we can do that still. But then when it comes to the actual open practice, open scrimmage, like that gets closed off, and we essentially, let's wait till week 1.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to agree with you on that. I think there's just so many negatives that come out of this. I mean, for one, they're not going to show anything. So people are going to complain that, oh my God, our offense sucks. It's like, no, like you mentioned on the last episode. No, it's because we're not showing anything. We're not going, you really think we're going to allow Illinois State to look at our plays a few weeks before the game? Obviously not. So, that makes sense why we're pretty vanilla on offense. Then you have a situation where Cade underperforms immensely and has a pretty bad day, pretty bad scrimmage. And then you have guys like Chris Hassel who think the sky's falling and act like, but that's the thing. He acts like Deacon Hill is our quarterback going into next year, right? He's not acting like we have two alternatives, a Cade McNamara, who again did not play well. And I know that's what he was basing it off of. He was basing it off of Cade's stat line, which 7 for 20 with a pick and 20 yards or whatever he did. But he's not acting like we have him, who's been a proven starter, who's been a winner, who's better than Deacon Hill. He's not acting like we have Brendan Sullivan, a transfer, a guy who's completed 70% at Northwestern, played in the Big Ten, started 6 games, whatever it is. He's acting like it's Deacon Hill, and that's what it's going to be, and that's obviously not true. And that's what kind of pisses me off a little bit.
Are you meaning like he's acting like Deacon Hill's like the backup to Cade? So like if like, because that's how like I feel like Hassel is treating it, is like that.
Correct. Like he like if
something happened to Cade, like
True.
Deacon's a
Yeah.
backup. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
That's how I definitely like looked at that situation too. Like I feel like Hassel just gets so, and I don't mind him. Like I listen to two guys named Chris, and for the most part they have some good things. But yes, like he definitely did that the other day to generate interaction and clicks, and he got a lot. I mean, there was a lot of Iowa State fans, a lot of just college football fans just talking shit. And I said on the last episode, like I can't disagree with them. That was a horrible freaking stat line. Like you can't get much worse than that. And when you go back and you watch the video, it's almost like worse than the actual stat line because he was missing guys. He just the accuracy, everything was
he missed them
badly.
Yeah,
yes, through the interception, had that fumble. Like it was not good. And so now that leads to the next question of, okay, we're sitting here. We don't want to overreact. That's not what we're trying to do. But can we, in a way, though, after seeing that performance and hearing that, and I guess I didn't really catch this until after I recorded, where they asked Kirk after the Kids Day and they asked, like, is this kind of been the norm for Cade? And he kind of alluded, like, yes, like this has been what's been kind of consistent with what we've been seeing. That scares me a little bit. Now we hear Cade had a really good practice on Mondays. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what we hear. But regardless of that, you see all that happen, and then you see Brendan, who we've been hearing that he's been actually doing pretty good in practice. And then on Saturday, although didn't have that good of a day, it wasn't like he was like far and away better than Cade. Definitely better though. Like he looked more poised. And I think the one thing that I really liked from him is towards the end there when they did the 2-minute drill and he went 5 for 6 and went right down the field. That is great. Like that's something we need. And so it's hard to just be like, yeah, Cade should be the solidified starter. Like I don't think that way. Now, for me, I don't really care who it is. Whoever's the best player out there. If it's Cade, it's Cade. If it's Brendan, it's Brendan. But there definitely 100% legitly needs to be a quarterback competition. And I think there is, because Kirk is not committed to Cade, judging off of what he has said during Iowa Media Days and then right after Kids Day, because they asked him a handful of times and he would not say Cade's the starter. Compared to, he did say that back in May at an iClub event. He said, yeah, Cade's a starter. And then he said it again, I think in June. So he's definitely kind of moved in that. Yep. Changed. Yep, exactly. So I do think that there is a quarterback competition, and I'm happy there is one, because I really do think at the beginning when they got Brendan, I think in the back of Kirk's mind that he was just looking at Brendan as like a backup, and it's just, no, you can't do that. Like you got to bring in Brendan and you got to have them compete, because that's the best thing. And then at that point, we can't wait too long though, because for me, like I don't like having quarterback competitions go into the season, but this week and next week, critical moments for that competition. And then I really think by game week, we got to figure out, okay, who is the guy? And then we got to ride with that guy until, if something happens.
Right. And I guess what I'm saying is, Cade, indefensible performance. The stats are what they are. Chris Hassel wasn't wrong when he was stating those facts. I think, again, it's just, I'm not going to overreact to one scrimmage, 8 days into camp at the time, right? And maybe it was just a really bad day. Quarterbacks have those bad days, and I get it. Us fans of Iowa fans, specifically when we're talking about Iowa quarterbacks in the last few years, we have PTSD, right? We do not want to see the same thing. I got more confidence in Cade than what I saw that day, and maybe I'm a wishful thinker here, or maybe I'm too optimistic, but I just think, and the other thing is Tim Lester, I think, unlike Brian, maybe has a little bit more pull with Kirk in terms of like who he really wants to start too. And maybe he can convince Kirk not to just go with the guy that Kirk always wants.
Yeah. The loyalty guy.
Yeah. The loyalty.
Because I do think deep down, like if I'm looking at this, and once again, just 2 minutes ago, I said, I don't care who it is. So I don't want people thinking like, oh, I thought you just said that. But I will say with Brendan is I do think he probably would be a little bit better in Lester's offense. Just hearing about kind of what Lester wants to do with this offense. And I just think Brendan would probably be a little bit better because he can run the ball. He's probably a little bit better in that short game passing. So it is. It's just it's an interesting question. It's an interesting dynamic, but at the same time, I think it's a healthy thing, and I think we're in a far better situation than we were last year at this time, because last year at
Right.
this time it was Cade McNamara and that was it. And actually last year at this time it was Cade McNamara hurt, and it's like, oh
Yeah.
boy, what are we gonna do? And then we
Yeah.
get into the season and we were trying every little thing to be as limited as possible because we knew Cade, like if Cade goes down, we're screwed. And so what
Right.
were they doing? They weren't doing QB sneaks. They weren't doing certain things because they knew like what was behind him. This year, you can kind of take that gamble a little bit because you have a guy behind. Just think
Yeah.
about that. If it ends up being Brendan, just think who the backup is. We have a guy that's like has experience, like would be a great back, or vice versa. If Cade's a starter, can you imagine like just knowing, okay, Brendan
Yeah.
Sullivan's the backup? We're in a very good situation, and I trust Tim Lester. I trust what he's doing, and so with that, I'm just gonna see how it plays out. But I do think these 2 weeks, this week and then into next week, are very critical. I think they have a big scrimmage on Saturday that will probably maybe determine a little bit of things, and then yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, think about it though, like next week at this time, it's Wednesday night. We are gearing up for game week, so it's approaching fast. So that's why I keep saying these 2 weeks are very critical.
Yeah, and like you said, I like that it's a competition. There needs to be a competition. There needs to be some competition at the quarterback spot at Iowa, right? It's only going
Yeah.
to make each guy better, and it's only going to ensure confidence if one of those guys goes down. And it's a good problem to have right now. I think Scott Dochterman even said he's like, I'm glad it's happening right now and not week 6,
Yeah,
right? In the
yep,
season. So,
exactly. Got
so
to
it
get
could
got to get it
be
figured out now, and then roll with the
correct.
guy, unless you go into the season. Yeah, it like
Yeah.
looks really bad. Then that
Yep.
part you'd maybe want to make a change. But was there anything else from Kids Day before we move on, like good or bad? Like, is there things that you were impressed with? Were maybe other concerns outside of the quarterbacks? I think we touched on the quarterbacks long enough. So yeah, anything like that?
Yeah, I think, aside from, was it TJ Hall that was limping? Is that
Yeah,
right?
he got hurt. I think he played like the first like down or
Yeah.
like the first series and was looking pretty good. I mean, that was the first thing was he was
Yeah.
starting over Nestor, which
Exactly.
we've been hearing. We were hearing reports, rumblings that TJ Hall's been having a really good camp, and then he starts, and then yeah, unfortunately gets hurt. But I think everything from what I'm hearing is he's fine, so that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. And like knock on wood, but hopefully, obviously coming out of that relatively healthy was my big thing, right? And unlike last year where Cade got hurt. So that was a win. And then this, you know, pretty typical, but the defense looking really, really good, really, really solid. They should be back to prime form, I think, in short order. So I love that. And then um, O-line looked pretty dang good as well as the run game. I'm excited to see that as well under Tim Lester, but got a small glimpse of it on Saturday. Not anything too crazy, but I thought they did a pretty good job, those two units specifically.
Yeah, offensive line was getting a good push in the run game, which was really cool to see because you think about like we were doing a bunch of just short passing plays on
Yeah.
Saturday. We weren't really doing anything. And so the defense kind of knew what was coming. And yet we were still, being able to generate some good yardage, which is a really good sign for the offense because especially in this first year in Tim Lester's offense, there's going to be ups and downs, and we keep
Yeah.
telling people to be patient. But the one thing that we can get good at, and hopefully we can be good at, is the run game because it'll just help this offense even more, generate some things because it's not going to be all polished and
Right.
flashy and good in year one. So you need to have something like that, and the run game can be something with the stable of running backs that we have, the experienced offensive line. Not only that, but it takes off the pressure a little bit on your quarterback. So that was really cool to see. And like I said on the last episode, this has been now the second time that I've seen the run game look pretty good. Spring game, we got to see
Yeah.
glimpses of it, and now then. So I think that's a good sign. And going into the Illinois State game, we'll talk obviously a lot about this going into the Illinois State game, but I'm going to be very curious to see how our run game looks because we should be able to, for the most part, be able to dominate the line of scrimmage against Illinois State. And so if we come out there and we look dominant, obviously, yes, it's only Illinois State, but I think that's going to be a good sign to come, really. So, yeah, for sure.
And
But
then
yeah,
just really quick, I was just gonna say, I mean, obviously the scheme obviously completely different. You
yep,
sent me a clip and you're like, I love this play. And it was just a simple, was like a motion, was like a power pitch play that I hadn't seen Iowa ever run before
yeah,
that moment. So just even a small glimpse like that, gives you confidence that okay, this is different. And, I think it's going to do wonders for the offense.
That's a play actually Austin was telling me that the Packers run a lot. That
Yeah.
um
Okay.
it was like that, yeah, the motion and then the power pitch. And it's like a legit like power pitch. It's not like a slow,
Mhm.
toss. I thought it was interesting. Tim Lester had a quote. I don't know if it was on Friday, but he said something about Kamari Moulton. There's a specific play that the Packers run, or they used to run with he plays for the Vikings now. I don't know. I keep
Aaron
forgetting his name.
Jones.
Aaron Jones,
Yeah.
yes. But there's a certain play that like Kamari Moulton, it just fits the mold for that play. And like he obviously wouldn't tell the reporters what
Yeah.
play it is. But I just think like things like that I think is cool.
Yeah.
And it goes back to like saying, Saturday, I think was just a small little glimpse of the offense. Like I think people have to realize, like, I think there's a lot more to it than what we saw on Saturday. Just got to be patient and,
Yep.
hope for the
It's
best.
not, yeah, it's not just about the scheme. It's also about, like you just mentioned, putting your guys in positions to do what they do best. I think
Yep.
is something that Brian just never really did. And I'm really confident that Tim will be able to do.
Getting the playmakers involved, finding what does your quarterback do good and hammer that. What does, your wide receivers do good, hammer that. Like that is something where, the flexibility part, and you go back to the first ever presser with Tim Lester, and he just kept talking about that, the flexibility. And that is huge. I felt like, with the old regime under Brian Ferentz, it was like, okay, we're going to do the same thing every single year, no matter who we have, no matter the talent, no matter the personnel, we're just going to keep doing the same thing. And that's just a recipe for disaster. So okay, let's get into the schedule difficulty. Once again, how we do this, we're not predicting games. We go from 12 being the easiest game of the schedule because we play 12 games, obviously. Hopefully we'll play more the 12, but we don't know that as of right now. And then 1 being the hardest, which, like I said, I'm sure we don't even have to say number 1 because it's probably going to be for both of us at Ohio State. But yeah, let's start with number 12. We'll just kind of go back and forth. I'm sure some of them will be right on with each other and others will have a disagreement. So you can go first at number 12.
All right. Starting with the easiest game on the schedule. I got Illinois State, our first game, actually. So I think this should be the easiest game on the schedule. It's an FCS opponent. I think, you sent me a tweet. They're like ranked like 20th in the FCS. Yeah. And I do think, and maybe you can get into it a little more, but I do think in the FCS, if you're not at or near the top when you're playing a Division I team, it's pretty tough sledding for that team, especially considering it's at home for Iowa. So I just think, a lot more D1 talent at Iowa should be our easiest game on the schedule. Should be.
Yeah.
Better be.
So I'm not just doing this to be in disagreement with you, but I actually have Troy. I did want to research a little bit on Troy and Illinois State because I didn't really know much about them. Obviously, we did the Big Ten preview about a month ago, which really got me primed to kind of know about each team a little bit. Mm-hmm. But when I got done with my research, I originally had Illinois State at number 12. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to flip it because I didn't realize this, but so Troy, their coach, John Summerall, who's now at Tulane, but the last 2 years at Troy, he went 23-4 with 2 straight Sun Belt titles. He went 12-2 and then 11-2. Like that's damn good. He was only there for 2 years, won 2 conference titles and had a great freaking record. And they had a really good offense. Well, he leaves, which is blessing for us. And with that, they lost a bunch of production. They're one of in terms of like losing talent, they're towards like the bottom of all of FBS college football. They lost like all their skill position players. They lost like majority of their offensive line, their secondary. So
like transfers?
Yeah, people leaving. Okay, probably all going to Tulane with the last head coach.
Probably.
Or something. So they have a new head coach. And I didn't realize this, but their new head coach is actually was the offensive coordinator for Notre Dame last year. And they had a pretty good, offense, but he doesn't have head coaching experience. Well, I guess take that back. In 2016, he was an interim head coach for Purdue, and he went 0-6 as a head coach there. So that's his like only experience as head coach. So with all that being said, and they play Memphis the week before, which I'm not saying Memphis is like a dominant team, but like, you got to go on the road at Memphis. They're, a little bit bigger physical team than, competition of their size. So I just think that game should be the easiest for us. I mean, just naming all that stuff. Now, I will say where this game is sandwiched in between Iowa State and our first Big Ten road game. That might be a little dicey. Remember last year? And I called it. I said, I'm a little nervous about Western Michigan because we might be sleepwalking. And boy, that first half where we sleepwalking, we almost saw, I mean, I thought we were going to lose that game. Now, obviously, second half, we completely dominated, but we were not feeling good. Remember that rain delay? And I think at that point we were down.
How could I forget?
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, this might be bad. Yeah. So, and that's the thing though. Stuff. It's like you're coming off like hopefully like a win against Iowa State, hopefully. And okay, if you beat them, you're coming off a big time win, and then the next week you're starting Big Ten play. So it's like I can see where like this can be, players are not as up for it as other games. And then okay, so then number 11 for me, and I'm sure number 11 for you is probably Troy.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So for number 11 for me then is Illinois State, because I mean, like when you're talking FCS and you mentioned they're ranked 20th, but their team is actually not as bad as I maybe was anticipating. So they returned their first team all conference running back. They returned all top 3 of their wide receivers and then 3 offensive line. So not a bad offense returning. Now they do have to replace their quarterback, and it's a quarterback battle between a guy that's had some starts for them and then a former 4-star transfer from Kansas State. So I don't know who's going to be the starter, but their offense might not be too bad. It might be a good first test for Iowa, honestly, to get geared up for Iowa State. Defensively, though, this is kind of what scares me a little bit, because once again, it's going to be our first game with this new offense. They returned their top 7 tacklers, 9 out of their top 11 altogether total tackles. All their linebackers are back. Some of them are all conference players. And then both of their safeties are entering their 3rd seasons as starters. And then both corners are coming back that have started games. So they have a pretty experienced defense that only allowed 20 points per game last year. So, like I said, I mean, I don't get me wrong. I think we will handle them. But after doing my research, I was like, I do think Troy's probably the easier game compared to Illinois State, which I didn't think prior to doing that research.
Yeah, and no, you make an excellent point there. I did have Troy at number 11. I just thought, the game after Iowa State, always emotional game. Obviously, you want to come out with a victory, and you're going to put everything you have into that game. And this is that game where, it gets overlooked a little bit, and it's always maybe just a little bit tougher, maybe early on than we expected. But I do think that we should win comfortably. I don't think they're a very good team. Yeah, and they, like you said, they're kind of like it just. And I did kind of, after you had mentioned that, I think you had actually told me that like a few days ago about how they lost a lot of talent, and it's kind of like Washington, where it's like you did so good, but then coach leaves, and it's just
you lose everybody. Yep.
Yeah.
Number 10 for you.
I have Northwestern at number 10. It's a home game. I think we've already mentioned it on this podcast and one of our previous episodes. I think Northwestern, while they're had a really good year last year, I think they come back down to earth a little bit and maybe don't overachieve like they did last year, considering that, we all thought they were going to be awful last year, and they did really, really well. And I think they come back down to earth a little bit. I don't think I'm not saying that we're going to like blow them out, because it's Northwestern. I always feel like, just a battle sometimes, more times than not, and more times than it even should be. But I do think we get the win there. But I do have them at number 10.
Yeah, I have them at number 10 as well. It's kind of the same things you said, even though it's like, it seems like more times than not, besides maybe 2022 when we blew them out at home. That was coming off the Ohio State game that we got dominated, and I thought that we're freaking going to lose to Northwestern. And then we come out and actually look pretty good that game. But yeah, for the most part, though, that game is always close. I mean, you go back to last year, probably going into the season, after they lose Fitzgerald, gets fired, we probably think, oh, we're going to dominate that game, or we should anyway in Wrigley Field. And then you get to that game and we have to kick a field goal to win it. So it's just, this series always comes down to that type of stuff. So I do think it's going to be harder than maybe what we think, but there's too many games ahead of them that it's just like, no, like we should take care of business. We're at home. I don't even know who their quarterback's going to be. Like, they're definitely not going to be as good as they were last year. So number 10 for them. Number 9.
This was tough. I'm going to go at Minnesota. I just think I know.
No, the reason why like I'm
So
like shocked is because like you're gonna be shocked at where I have them at. But yeah, carry on.
I going to be very tough environment, but the schedule and kind of where we're who's home and away down this list a little bit. I had them at number 9, and part of it is maybe it's my confidence in the Iowa Hawkeyes and the fact that I think we're going to go in there and have this game circled from the moment we lost in the fashion that we did last year. That we're going to play pretty well in Minneapolis. So maybe that's just my overconfidence in that. But yeah, I went number 9 with Minnesota.
I have at Michigan State. God, we haven't played at Michigan State since 2017, which we lost, by the way. But I know they're bringing in a new coach, a lot of new transfers, things like that. Might be a little bit of a tricky game just because it's been so long since we played at Michigan State and things like that. But we should take care of business. I mean, it's going to be a rebuilding year for Michigan State. We honestly got them kind of where we want them, in this first year. But still going to, I think, be maybe tougher than we think. But we should have no problem taking care of business. Number 8.
Number 8, I have Washington at home. Unfamiliar opponent, obviously, but like I just mentioned, they got affected pretty hard by the transfer portal after their head coach left for Alabama.
Yep.
The game's at home, though. I think that'll be a very, very intense environment there in Iowa City for that game. I think that
although it's going to be freaking 11 a.m. probably, so that's the only thing that sucks.
I did forget about that.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I like it. It's going to be a weird time for them playing at like.
No, it's definitely going to benefit us, but it just sucks that I just hate those type of games. I mean, that should be a 2:30 or a night game in Kinnick. Like you're welcoming in a new team and a team that you've never played, and I don't know. I wish that was a night game, But no, I have them at number 8 as well. I mean, when you lose all those players. And then you're talking, probably going to be 11 a.m. game, which is 9 a.m. kickoff for them. We should take care of business. We're going to be coming off probably a loss at Ohio State, so it's going to be kind of like let's get back to it. And similar like last year when we played Penn State, got our ass kicked, and then the next week we got back to it and we beat Michigan State. It wasn't pretty, but we beat them. So I have them at number 8. Number 7.
Number 7, I have at Maryland. Traveling out east, never fun. I know we dominated the last time we played them. At Maryland, but I just think there'll be a pretty decent team this year. And obviously when you have to travel that far, it never makes it any easier. So I've got them at number 7.
So I have at UCLA. This was tough because I was gonna put them maybe a little bit higher just because when you talk Iowa going out west, it sometimes does not end pretty. However, I do think this game is going to be in November. By then, that's when Iowa's usually playing their best football. And hopefully by then, we have a good record and this is a business trip. Like we got to go in here. We're going to be a better team than UCLA. Their new head coach for them as well. They're not going to be very good. Like let's go in similar like Maryland 2021, where we were a little nervous about going out to Maryland because we never play there. It's a Friday night game and we just dominate. Like we went in, it was a business trip. We got to treat that as this. So with that being said, I feel confident. I know I have horrors from back in the day when we go out west, Arizona, when we lost to them and just other teams. And then, the Rose Bowl 2015, which is a little bit different of a circumstance. But I just think, November football, that's usually when we play good football. I feel good. Number 6.
Number 6, I have Iowa State. Obviously.
Whoa.
Yep.
Damn. All right.
And why? I want to hear your thought.
Well, no, because I'll give you my thoughts when I get to Iowa State.
Well, I was just gonna say, obviously it's gonna be tough game, and I know we lost last time we played at home, and then I've struggled when we play them at home. It's just weird to say.
Yeah.
But even like the last time we lost at home, we should not have lost that game. We were so bad on offense, and I just think, give me just this much better on offense, and I feel really good about playing that team because our defense shows up against Iowa State every single year. Just give me this
Yeah.
much offense, and I'll feel pretty good. So I got them at number 6.
That's fair. Number 6 for me at Maryland. I think you just said Maryland, and I have the same kind of reasons of why you said, so I don't think there's really much more to touch on. I will say it's going to be a little bit weird with the dynamic of Brian Ferentz now there. I know he's not an actual coach, but he's an analyst for them. That's going to be a little strange, but we're going to be coming off a bye week, which we usually don't do good after bye weeks, but hopefully this is a one out to that, and hopefully we actually look decent. But yeah, I have them at number 6. Number 5.
Number 5, I had Michigan State. East Lansing. I think while they're in a rebuild, they got a new head coach from Oregon State, the new quarterback, Aiden Childs. I think he's a definite upgrade for them.
Yeah.
I think they'll be, it's just a tough place to play. And like, they're going to be a tough out, no matter if it's home or away. Obviously, like last year, we won on a punt return essentially. So, I think going to East Lansing is going to be tough.
Yeah, no, that game might, like I said, I have them at number 9, but it's going to be I think it's going to be a more tricky game than maybe some fans or some people think, for sure. Number 5 for me, I have Wisconsin. What I like about this game is it's at home for us this year. I do think that they will be better in year 2 under Luke Fickell. I just saw today that they named Tyler Van Dyke their starting quarterback, transfer from Miami. Yeah, altogether they should be better. But at the same time, like, I like how Wisconsin, and this is not me thinking that we're going to dominate the series from now on. I do not think that. I think it's going to be a good, really, really good series. But I like that they're not like what we used to be, because it felt like they were always just better than us, right? The physical, really physical Wisconsin, and they were just better than us.
They're us, but they just did it.
Yes,
better.
And so it's kind of nice, like them not being that anymore, right? Now, that does not mean thinking that like we're just going to be a much better team than them from moving forward. That's not what I think. I'm just saying I think it fares better for us. So, but yeah, I have them at number 5 just because it is a home game. It's gonna be a big time game, probably the blackout game for Iowa and us fans, and I think we should definitely take care of business there. All right, number 4.
All right, number 4, I have Wisconsin. So, not much more than what you just stated. Obviously it's going to be a tough game. They're going to be better than they were last year. But the game is at home, which obviously I love, because like last year, I mean, I still am confused how we won that game last year. I mean, we were so bad, but they were somehow even a little worse. Yeah, I know it was a brutal game, but they're going to want revenge, like you mentioned. But I got them at number 4. Yep.
So for me at number 4, I have Nebraska. It's going to be a very interesting game because really Nebraska's season kind of rides and dies on their freshman quarterback, Dylan Raiola. If he has a great year, like I think Nebraska's poised to have a really good year, and you get to that game, that could be massive implications potentially. Night game in Kinnick on NBC Black Friday. That's just going to be weird, but I also obviously love that. But it's going to be a tough game because Nebraska, I really like Matt Rule, and I hate saying that because I do not like Nebraska, but I respect and I really like what Matt Rule, just everything he just talks about, he says. It's hard not to like the guy. Unlike the previous head coach. So I think he knows what he's doing. And I think moving forward, like they're always going to be a very, very tough opponent. Always going to be like in the top 4 for me in terms of like when we do these ranking difficulties, especially when we play like on the road. But I do like where we have them. They're at home, but at number 4 for me. Number 3.
Yep. Number 3, Nebraska. So we were just off here in the last couple by about a spot, but like you just mentioned, they're going to be, you would think, better than what they were last year. If they can eliminate the horrendous amount of turnovers they have, they beat us last year. They don't throw that pick, right? So, I think it's going to be a very tough game. Their offense, like you said, going to ride on the freshmen who, could, as a freshman could make mistakes, but they do have a really good defense. And if their offense can be consistent, they'll be a tough out for sure.
And you think about like with that, where that game is scheduled, Dylan, if he plays all year, that's going to be like his 12th game starting. So it almost it'd be better like playing them earlier in the year when you're factoring a freshman quarterback. But he still might, it's going to be a night game. It's going to be a hostile environment, especially if Iowa at that point has a good record. Like that's going to be very tough for a freshman quarterback.
We're competing for,
playoffs or whatever.
Playoffs or whatever. Exactly.
Yep.
Where it's going to mean a lot. So, yep.
Number 3, I have at Minnesota. Now, I've told you from the longest time, I feel very confident in this game because I really think Kirk Ferentz hates PJ Fleck and everything that happened last year and all that. But I will say this will be the first road game for us this year. This is a year where with playing Iowa State at home, we get 3 home games and then it's bam, first road game. And it's at, a rivalry game on the road, Big Ten, start a Big Ten play. And I just think that's going to be a little tough. And it hasn't been announced yet, but all signs point to that game being a night game for Minnesota. So it's going to be a pretty tough environment. And we don't have a quarterback situation. Like, it's still like up in there potentially. I'm hoping it's not, that might be a little tricky. Minnesota is relying on, an FCS quarterback that's going to be coming in, put up fantastic numbers at his FCS program. But we also have to remember, you're going to be going up against a little bit better defenses, buddy, old pal. You're going up against Phil's dogs and you're going up against, just better defense. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Minnesota kind of manages that because I do think that quarterback is good. I watched his highlights a couple weeks ago, but it's just a completely different level. So, but yeah, I have them at number 3. Number 2,
I've got at UCLA. This game's going to come right after the Michigan, the Wisconsin game. It's going to be a short week. It's going to be on a Friday night, all the way out west in California. I just hate traveling that far. I just think it's such an advantage for the home team. And then it's going to be like that when you're going coast to coast now in the Big Ten. So you got to obviously manage that. But I just think on a short week after, an emotional Wisconsin rivalry game, I don't particularly love that. So I've got that as the second hardest game.
Yeah.
And I don't think UCLA's team is really going to be that good. And they've got new coaches and all that. I just hate that spot on a short week all the way out there. So that's why I went them at number 2.
Number 2 for me, Iowa State. And this is where I was like a little shocked because I had them as my second, which is right behind Ohio State. For me, it's like Iowa State this year, I don't know what to expect because it seems like in the past, whenever they have high expectations, they always come short. And then when they don't, they end up exceeding. And so like last year, they had no expectations. They end up exceeding expectations. They were a very young team last year. Now you bring everybody back and your expectations are a lot higher. They still maybe aren't quite, a lot of people still think Utah and like Oklahoma State, but, a lot of people think, Iowa State is like a playoff
dark horse.
Dark horse contender. But yeah, no, they have obviously a pretty good team. I mean, they have great offense, which I do think our defense should be able to manage them for the most part. But you're talking a decent decent offense. It's always going to be close. Like it's never as much as we always hope for an ass whooping. It just seems like under Matt Campbell for Iowa State, they have things figured out. It just never is. It's like always just like comes down to the wire. And even last year, like a year where like it was looking like it was going to be an ass whooping. It comes down to like we had to stop them on 4th down. Because it was only a 7-point game. And it's like, how do we even get to this point? We should be up by 3 touchdowns right now. It just seems like it always happens that way. It's going to be a hostile environment for them. But I just think that they're going to be a pretty good freaking solid team this year. And that game does scare me a little bit. Like last year, I felt really confident. Like I felt extremely confident with like Cade, and like they were such a young team and they're starting Rocco, who's never really started. I felt so confident. This year, I don't feel as confident. Like there's like a part of me where it's like, God, I just hope we can get the job done, but I feel a little bit less confident than maybe some people do. So I have them at number 2. And then number 1, at Ohio State. I don't think there's really much to say. I mean,
no, it's the shoe, right?
Yeah,
it's going to be the toughest environment that you could probably play in. Talent, NFL talent everywhere.
Yep.
Not gonna be a fun game. We always say we hope that it can be competitive. But for me, it's like, gosh, I just come out of that game healthy and try to put up some points and I guess hope for the best. Obviously, I don't want to just say oh my God, we're gonna I don't want to say we're gonna lose, but it's pretty much an L. So yeah.
Best case scenario is we're 4-0 going to that game. where that game doesn't mean anything at that point. And we just put up like a small fight just to make it seem like kind of like what we said last year against Penn State. And we didn't do that. Our defense played really good that day. If our offense just played slightly better and, let's say the final score was 30-14 or 30-17, we're not feeling as bad. But since the offense was so freaking terrible last year, that game was such a joke. It was embarrassment. That's the thing with that game. It's like, just walk out of that game not being embarrassed. Can we just do that? Can we just go in? Last year, what was it? 93 or 90 some to 0 against ranked opponents. Like let's change that a little bit this year. So we're not, whenever someone talks Iowa, they don't bring that up because it is an embarrassing, that's very embarrassing. Like we got to figure that out because we used to compete against the big dogs and we would sometimes beat them. And it seems like as of late, the last 2 to 3 years, it's like anytime we play a Michigans of the world, Penn States of the world, Ohio States, it's like it's over in the first quarter. And it's like, what? No, let's get back to what it used to be. I'm not saying we used to beat every, ranked team that we played, but it just seemed like more times than not, it was closer or we actually put up a fight. And I just want to get to that point. So, all right, well, that will do it for that. The schedule difficulty. I know we're going to have another topic in mind, but that's why I warned you guys at the beginning, depending on how long this goes, because I had a feeling it was going to go long. And I try to keep podcasts around 40 to 45 minutes, maybe a little bit longer sometimes, but anything more than that is just like, I don't know, it's just too long for me. And we still have 2 more episodes before the first game. So we'll have plenty of time to talk about that topic. Anything else, Tyler, before we end it?
Nope. Man, we're right around the corner. We say it every episode, but especially with me, I'm kind of sprinkling it or, stepping in and out here on some of these episodes. And it's like, every time I feel like that I've been hopping on, it's like, man, where's the time gone? We are
exactly. It's just going by so fast.
Like 2 weeks away, almost a little over.
So the plan is next week, we'll do another episode. I have obviously the topic that we're going to talk about today and then some other topics in mind. And then the following week is game week. And that's when we're going to have Colby on. So it'll be us 3. We're going to do a game by game prediction because by then we should kind of know about injuries. We should know about more about this team and things like that by then. And then we'll obviously preview the Illinois State game. And so, and then it's game 1 and then we're back to 2 episodes a week. So it's approaching fast, but well, that will do it for this episode. Thank you guys all for listening and have a good rest of your week and go Hawks.